Hey everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Local Leaders, the podcast. And the man sitting across from me needs no introduction at all. He has been on my show several times. He is everybody's favorite assessor, Jeff Taylor. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Jim. Thanks for having me on. I have Wendy Thibodeaux. She is the assessor from Lafourche Parish, and she's coming in here today. I've known Wendy for about 21 years. And when I tell you that you've got people that can assess and they can do a very good job, she's probably the best assessor we have in the state. Because, and the reason I say that is I've got a lot of friends that are going to be watching this podcast and they're going to say, what about me? What about me? This lady started from the bottom. She was hired into an assessor's office in St. Bernard Parish several years ago. And then she moved to Lafourche and started working over there. So she has literally worked in every single department. She learned them from the bottom up. She didn't learn them from the top down. She learned each one. She knew how they worked, the ins and outs of everything. So when she became assessor, she knew everything that there was to know about transfers and any kind of personal property or real estate or real property or commercial. She knew how it worked. She also knew how to do the millages. She knew how to do all the work that was necessary. So when I tell you that we have watched her over the last 21 years, she's been assessor for about 8.5 years, but she worked for Mike Martin, who passed away in office a few years ago, and we watched her as she helped lead that office, and then she transitioned that office from him passing away to her taking over the office. And she's been phenomenal at her job, and we're very proud of her.
Well, that's what I call a stamp of approval right there. And Jeff knows his stuff. He's been doing this quite a long time himself. So that's a great feather in your cap. Now, he said a couple things there that struck with me, and that was he mentioned Lafourche Parish. He also mentioned St. Bernard. And those are some areas that over the years have dealt with disasters, right? And so I can only imagine from an assessor standpoint, you picked up probably a lot of experience dealing with that stuff.
I did. And first of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for that introduction. But I'm originally from St. Bernard. I worked at the assessor's office there for about 4 years, and I moved to Lafourche Parish. And while I was in Lafourche Parish, all my family was still back in St. Bernard when Katrina hit. And they all came to Lafourche. And when they went back, I paid attention very closely on how they handled just the recovery, and especially with the assessor's office, how they handled the recovery. So last year when Ida hit Lafourche Parish, it was very helpful to see how they rebuilt, what worked, what didn't work, and it was very helpful for me to be able to assess and moreover reassess all of the properties in Lafourche Parish. So it was a learning experience in 2005 with Katrina, and I was able to apply that to me being the assessor and reassessing valued property in 2001 with Ida.
Absolutely. And just an invaluable experience and kind of trial by fire, but something that you just learn so much from going through things like that. Jeff, you know all about that with the flood, right? Mm-hmm. And I say it to people all the time. When you have people in your local government that have been through things like that, you can't replace that. Can't replace it. Somebody that hadn't been through that, there's a shock there involved.
Well, I'm going to say something. You have people all the time talk about the job that we do in our office and everything. If you've got somebody that's new, that this is their first time and they haven't went through an office and they haven't learned how it works, and all of a sudden they just want to be in an office, whether it be sheriff or assessor or clerk of court or parish president, and they haven't been through the fire, they haven't been through a flood, they haven't been through a hurricane, they haven't been through all of those things that were disasters. Yeah. Could you imagine somebody with no experience trying to work the flood? Can you imagine somebody with no experience working what they went through? It's hard enough with the experience that you have. But if you don't have any experience, and I don't know to call Wendy Thibodeaux, who's been through this disaster, and I'm new and I haven't formed a relationship, you get to it, but it takes you a while to get there. And so experience matters.
100%.
And so when you go through that flood, I can pick up the phone and call, okay, when y'all went through Katrina and everything was disaster, what did y'all do? Tell me the things you did. What did you do over here? Houston, what did y'all do when you went through the flood? Nashville, Tennessee, you went through a flood. I had built relationships over going with IAAO, going to the state conventions, meeting her, going to classes with her, knowing the type of person she was going to be, that she was going to give me good advice, that she wasn't going to lead me on a rabbit chase. She was going to actually give me the advice that worked for her. Now, sometimes we run into a situation where some of our leaders that were assessors before, and now they're different. They don't quite do the same thing.
Yeah,
They
and
don't lead you in the right direction.
I cannot tell you how much I believe in that. And I say it all the time. You don't have to reinvent a wheel. Find somebody that's been through it and kind of see what their roadmap was. Take from that what you think will work for you and apply it. I couldn't agree more. That's a great point. And so this awesome assessor here, she took I guess the bull by the horns in some manner of speaking, and you saw some issues and got with some people, and eventually you came up with an amendment that's going to be on the ballot in November.
November 8th.
So I want to talk all about this. Tell me about this amendment.
Constitutional Amendment number 5. Well, how it kind of came about is that in Lafourche Parish, we are heavily reliant on the oil and gas industry. And in 2016, there was a downturn in that industry. And so I had just become assessor, got elected as assessor in Lafourche, and I wanted to keep Lafourche more competitive with our neighboring parishes in the oil and gas industry. And one of the ways that I saw in my office that I could do this is to lower our millage rates. So I went around, we have 54 taxing districts. I went around to every single taxing district, some of them 5 times a week. And I did a presentation on how to lower your millage rates, how it was beneficial, how it was economically feasible for us to do that to stay competitive. And I'm very proud to say that out of the 54 taxing districts, 44 of them did not roll their millage forward or did not levy the maximum rate that the voters elected them to.
Right.
Only for 2019 to roll around, and all of those 44 taxing districts that did not roll forward, we were mandated by the Constitution to levy the highest rate, or we were going to lose that adjustment millage. So all I did in 2016 is delay the inevitable, because in 2019, all 54 of us were back at our maximum rate. Right. Even if it wasn't budgetarily necessary, the Constitution mandates that we levy the maximum rate or we lose it. And so rather to be safe than sorry, everybody typically they roll up they'll let their millage rate to the maximum rate.
And if that sounds crazy to some of the people out there listening, that's legit the way it was. And when I first started diving deep into this amendment, I was shocked that was even in place. You know, if you don't live that life of assessing, you don't realize that maybe. And it didn't make a whole lot of sense. And you were the person that figured that out. And then you said, I've got a problem here, and how can I solve it? And you took those steps necessary. Now, Jeff, I'm sure at some point she was bouncing this off of people and saying, you know, we need to take this to legislators and things like that.
We had a legislative meeting. She brought it up. At the time, I was president, actually, when she brought it up. And we were like, okay, guys, we have talked about this for years and years and years. We finally got someone that said they want to do this. Let's get behind her and push. So we did. And we were there behind her. Sometimes we were so far behind her she didn't see us, okay? But we were there with her, making all the times that she needed to get up there and speak in the committees. Jim, she went to all the committees, 3 committees, I think, Wendy, is what you went through. And she went through the 3 committees. She went to the House floor. She went to the Senate floor. She lost 1 vote in all of that. And for a measure of this, when we talk about how Democrats and Republicans can't agree on anything, they might not agree on anything, but they agreed on Wendy Thibodeaux's amendment.
Absolutely.
And so when you look at that and you realize that this is a no-brainer, this is one of those, and I actually have people that are telling me, I don't know about this. It's a no-brainer, because if you don't do it, they're going to raise it back up to the maximum. And they're going to tell you the reason they've got to is because they'll lose it. This way they can never, ever, 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 ever lose their maximum. They can lower it every year for the next 20 years. And if they need to go back up to that maximum to get them a fire truck, a piece of equipment for a ditch, or computers in my office, or the sheriff needs to buy new cars and everything, they can go back up that year.
Right.
But they can save you money over the time that they can lower it, and they can never use the excuse again that, oh man, if I do this, I'm going to lose my maximum. We're taking that out of their repertoire.
Yeah, because as it is now, I would imagine there are some people hesitant about lowering millages because what happens if somebody forgets? And that's not typically maybe the situation in your bigger entities, but if you're talking about where you're from, these are volunteer folks that come in and they go on these boards, and they're constantly switching these people in and out.
Going out every month or so. As we was talking about a little while ago before we came on air, we was talking about Albany and Coyell and the Port Vincent area, the small areas. And then all of a sudden, their secretary-treasurer has taken a job out of state, or he don't want to do it anymore. He wants to do all this, and they bring someone else in, and they do this 2 or 3 times, and all of a sudden, when it comes up for that millage, we send all the information to them, but they get it, and they have no clue what they're looking at because they haven't dealt with it. So they put it over to the side, and next thing you know, the Livingston Parish Council in the 80s and the 90s and in 2011, somebody along the way forgot to roll back up to the maximum, and they went from 5 mills now to 2.9. You think that don't make a difference when they're only getting half of the money they could have gotten? And the things that, so when we start complaining about it, a fire district up in North Albany, a fire district in Coyell, you lose half of your millage, you're dead in the water.
Yeah,
you can't buy trucks, you can't buy equipment, you can't buy anything that's necessary. So we're going to take that away too. Not only are we taking the excuse away from you, but we're taking away the error from you. You cannot make an error now. You can raise it back up to your maximum anytime you want to. And it's all because of what she did.
So, Ms. Thibodeaux, let me ask you this. How did it feel to only get one dissenting vote, essentially, in the entire legislature? Everybody's behind you, right?
It felt very good, because when you go up there, you never know what questions you're going to be asked. And with millages, it's a complex and confusing process to begin with. And I was just concerned because I understand it only because I've been doing it for so long. Was I going to be able to convey what was going on in my head to these people that had no idea? Some of them had never fooled with millages before, even knew what it was. And I was very pleased on the last vote on the House floor when I only had that one vote against me. I was like, okay, I was able to convey it. I was able to express to them what the issue was and to get it to the vote of the people, that the public, because truly it's the public's money. It is the taxpayers' money that we are in charge of. And one of the main things that I wanted to accomplish with this is that if it is successful and it does pass, is that taxing districts, people that are in charge of taxpayers' dollars, that they are more accountable, that we are more transparent, and that we are fiscally responsible with someone else's money. And that if I don't need that money budgetarily, that a constitution or government is not telling me that I have to overtax my people.
Right.
I am a taxpayer. I know this is ironic, but I don't like to pay taxes. I believe in this process, but I don't want to be overtaxed just like no one else does, especially business and industry. When this roll forward process happens, when the Constitution tells us we have to levy that maximum rate, the ones that pay it the most of that increase is business and industry, because they don't have a homestead exemption or so forth. So if there's a business, say in Livingston Parish, you have 45 districts?
45, 46
So
districts.
say the next parish over, they have 100 taxing districts. So that's 144 districts. And you own a business in both of those parishes, you are paying 144 roll forwards or increases in millage rates.
Wow.
If it's not necessary.
Sandra Richard has been in the business of selling homes for over 20 years. This award-winning realtor brings the perfect blend of professionalism, integrity, and client satisfaction to every buying and selling transaction. A passion for both her clients and her community makes Sandra the perfect choice when buying or selling your home. So if you're in need, call the Cajun Lady, Sandra Richard, at 225-955-5484, or visit her on the web at sandrasellshouses.com. Sandra Richard, a proud sponsor of Local Leaders, the podcast. Wow, that's a great way to put that.
This
exactly
constitutional amendment, it can only lower taxes. It will not increase taxes.
No.
It can only lower the taxes, and that's what I want. Is that right now Louisiana is talking, we need tax reform, tax reform, tax reform. And often I find that lawmakers, they want to incentivize business and industry to come to Louisiana by exempting property and removing money. Yeah. This is one way we can incentivize business to come to Louisiana and make us more economically attractive by correcting something that was done in 1974.
Yeah.
And it will
49 years.
Yes. And I don't, everywhere I go, everybody asks the question, somebody does, why was this put in place? I have no idea why it was put in place. I can't get a straight answer. The closest thing I got is that it was put in as an amendment on a floor vote. They won't even tell me whether it was a Senate floor or the House floor, but it was put in at the 11th hour. And, we can sit here and go, okay, well, why was it put in? I'm not even concerned about that. And anybody that knows me, it's like, okay, it's wrong. Yeah. Whatever the reason, it's wrong and we need to fix it. I use this phrase all the time. We used to smoke in hospitals. We learned that it wasn't good for us, so we don't do it anymore. This is the same thing.
Sure.
Whatever the reason was, it doesn't matter. It's not good for business. We need to fix it and move on.
I love that. And we love things that are good for business around here at Local Leaders. I can tell you that. Now, you get through all that process, and one thing that is important to remember here is it requires a vote of the people. So none of this is going to raise your millage at all. All this does is allows assessors to be able to roll that back up to the maximum that the people already voted in.
For my office only. I only get to vote on my office.
Yeah.
The school board votes for theirs. The sheriff's office votes for his. The fire districts vote for theirs. Everybody has all these different districts. The only one I control is mine.
Right.
So it gives us the ability to roll back anytime we need to without having to. That's the biggest thing. So it cannot, the only way you can put a millage on people is if the vote of the people. Right. So if it's already in, the only thing this can do is lower them. If they choose to do nothing, if the one of the districts decides, I don't want to do anything, I want to stay at the maximum, nothing changes. But if they decide they want to start lowering it, then all of a sudden, people always tell me, they said, well, you didn't lower it but 10%. You didn't lower your millage, my 8.52. They said, you lowered it 0.5. You lowered it 0.5%. I said, okay, if everybody did. What if everybody lowered their millages by 0.5%? You could be looking at 10, 15, 20% reduction in your tax amount.
That's huge. Wrap your mind around that.
That's huge. Now, wrap your mind around it. So when they look at you and say, oh, we're not, if we lower our millages and something happens, we're going to lose this. And then you walk out because you've never had any experience with it and everything. You go, oh, well, if they told me, that must be what it is. And then you're looking over at me and I'm shaking my head going, don't come ask me. A lot of times they'll ask me, we want you to come talk about these taxes. You really don't want me to. Because when I do, I'm going to tell them these things. This is what I'm going to tell them. You sure you still want me to come? No, that's all right. You stay. So when you're talking about these things with people, this is going to allow them to understand that nothing can happen to raise it. Don't let anybody tell you it can raise it. It can't. The only thing this can do is lower it.
Yeah.
That's it. If you pass a new tax, then we got a new tax. But if the existing taxes right now, the only thing this can affect is the lowering of it. Nothing more. If anybody tells you anything more than that, you've got my number, call me.
Yeah.
I can explain it.
And we'll put his number in the comments.
Absolutely.
His office number. Man.
Absolutely.
But you can't really hammer it down enough. And I'll tell you, I'll say it again, it will alleviate the hesitancy that someone may have of lowering a millage because they don't have to worry about, well, what if we forget to roll it back up to the maximum? We're going to lose it. And look, has it happened, Jeff?
Yes, it's happened. It happened in Albany. It happened in the Parish Council, as I said, in the 80s, the 90s, and 2011. North Park over here forgot to put theirs back on the election one year. They lost 15 mills for 1 year. They had to pass a new tax because they forgot to put the whole thing back on. And so it happens. If you do it this way, it takes that error away. Now, there's going to be people out there say, well, if they don't do all that, they should have that. No, we have to have money to run government. You have to have money to do your streets and your drainage and everything. You got to have education for your kids. But we do it backwards in Louisiana. In most states, what they do is they say, tell us your budget, and then they tell you how many meals, they tell you how much money they can give you on millage. In Louisiana, we tell you, please tell us how much money you want, and then when you do, here's a budget for you.
Wow.
So we tell them up front, you're going to get $1 million, and so then they make their budget meet $1 million. They may not need it.
Yeah.
But if we start to where we get to line item these things, it's going to be a lot better.
It sure would. And for you, this required a lot of extra work, right? This is not just your everyday thing and you're going to work and you're assessing. And I mean, this was a ton of work. And shout out to Jeff Taylor over here, who has also been working hard and very verbal here locally with this, even speaking at a council meeting just previous to this. So if you want to check that out, you can go on YouTube and you can just punch in Livingston Parish Council and you'll see Jeff's picture and click on that and you'll hear a good little synopsis of him really pushing this. So I like to see it that the assessors are together on this and they're all getting behind it, and all because you saw something that you probably looked at and said, this don't make a whole lot of sense.
No. It started in 2019, and I have to say that is one thing about our association and the assessors. We all stick together when one of us needs something, or if there's a new assessor, or if there is a natural disaster. We all pull together, and we all call each other, and we all support each other, even in things like a constitutional amendment or any kind of legislation, anything that helps, just because we all know that culturally we have differences, we have different landscapes, we have different, entities that are our tax base, that make up the majority of our tax base. And even though we may not understand it, we are supportive, and we also go to those assessors and it's like, what do you need? And Jeff is the epitome of that in our association. So when this came up and I sat down and I explained it to the legislative committee, he was like, okay, this has been wrong for a long time. We need to get this done. And we found one of my senators. I went to approach to one of my senators and I asked him to file the bill for me. And that was in 2019. We started working up the verbiage of the bill. And that was a feat in itself. And to make sure that you didn't remove one word that would change the whole process, because I did not want to change the requirements of the taxing districts. I wanted the public to know when a district is rolling forward with the advertisements, the hearings. I didn't want any of that to change because I believe the public needs to know.
Yes.
But I could have removed one word and it would have changed all of that.
It's amazing how that works.
So it was very painstaking going through every single syllable of every word to work it out and make sure that I wasn't doing anything, unbeknownst to me, that I had removed the transparency part of it. That wasn't it. All this is doing is removing the language that mandates us to levy the maximum rate. That's all it does. It does not give these taxing districts the right to go back and recoup any millages that they lost prior to this. And it also, there was a flaw in the Constitution that if a taxing district, so just like when reassessment occurs and you have an increase in your taxable value, the millage rates are rolled back.
Right.
If there's a decrease in the taxable value, the opposite happens. The millages roll up. And what we learned through going through this is that there are districts throughout the state, not here locally, anywhere close to here, but that happened back in the 80s. And that taxing district was using this mandate to levy a maximum millage rate, an increase above what the voters voted on from the 80s.
Wow.
What in this amendment, it will also correct that in the next reassessment, if there is an increase, they have to go back to what the voters approved.
Very good. Very good. And so much hard
Jim,
work.
she's put so much work into this. This is one of those things that, and I know y'all have heard me here. I've been in churches. I've been in homeowners association meetings. We need to pass this amendment.
In my opinion, probably the most important amendment on the ballot in a long time.
In a long, long time. And it's one of those things that you haven't heard me in the paper talking about other amendments before. There's been a lot of assessment amendments that I haven't got out. People call me and I tell them my deal. This is one that is so important that I have talked to everybody. My family is tired of hearing it because if we go to a party, y'all need to do this. We had our class reunion the other day. I need y'all to help me on amendment number 5. It's just important because we've worked at lowering millages. We worked at it, and like you said, you do all this work, and then you got to start all over because the 4-year comes and it jumps back up. Yeah. This is going to help so much with this. And then I want to talk to you more later about the centralized meeting of all the districts to where we can all talk about in front of people, because I get a lot of phone calls when I start talking about we're going to have one meeting where all the districts come together and we all start talking about it at one time. But this here is going to help that also. So when they set up the deal, you can lower your millages, and I can tell them then you can lower it because if you ever need it, you can go back up to the maximum. And it's all because of this one.
And just seems like a no-brainer, right? I mean, when you really look at it, it just seems like something that obviously should have been done a long time ago, just didn't happen. Who cares why? Who cares why it initially got put on the books the way it did? But now we can fix it.
Yeah,
I've
got a theory.
Move forward.
No, I haven't went back to study it yet, but I got a theory. What she said a little while ago. What we find a lot of times when we're down at the legislature is that you have a clean bill that comes up. But if somebody really, really, really wants their name involved in that bill, they may not have been a part of that bill at all. But if they see it becomes popular, they will run up to the microphone and put an amendment on it.
Yeah.
So at that point, their name gets to go on that bill. So somewhere along the line, it happens today. It happens all the time in the legislature. We watch it. We sit in the back and we watch them as they go up to the microphone over and over. But in 74, that's probably what happened. Somebody was back there. He needed to have his name in the paper back home, and so he goes up there and throws his name in there. I haven't been able to research it, but watching what I've watched the last 22 years and in the last few little past here, you will see that a whole lot. And all they want is their name in that deal, and they go on about their business. And then that way they can go back home to all their districts, North Louisiana, where they go, and say, I helped pass this bill.
That's right.
They read it.
They hitching on that wagon, right?
My name's right here. My name's, well, how much work do you do on it? Well, I walked up to the microphone. There's my name. You see my name right there. So it happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
So really
it's the ones that get in there and fight it from the beginning,
Yeah. I mean, that's, that's a thing that you spearheaded, and, I can, from your position, that's something hopefully you'll be able to look back on and be very proud that you were the one that kind of spearheaded that. And I love it that other, in some industries and some jobs and whatever, sometimes people get competitive, and it's like, she's getting all the limelight or something. Look at this guy. He's standing behind you, and he's probably prouder than you are.
I am. I mean, Jeff, because when I came in, she was working in the office, and then when the assessor passed away, I actually went to help her in her election. I wanted to help put up signs. Because I knew what she had. I knew her ability. I knew what she was going to be able to do. And so for so long, what do you hear? You hear, well, the assessors, man, they are politicians. They're crooked. They do all this kind of stuff. Yeah. That is one of the statements that really angers me more than that. I work with some really, really, really good people, and there's bad in everything, and there's good in everything. It don't matter what profession you have, you've got them.
Very
but
true.
When you see somebody well good said. And you want to see your industry picked up, you go and find somebody like this, and you tout her, and you help her win her election, because you know that she's not just going to sit there and do things the old status quo. She's going to come up with new ideas. Y'all ask me all the time, why do you go out of state to school and y'all go over these things? Because I already know what Louisiana's doing. I go find out what they're doing, and I bring it back over here, and I implement it into my office, and all of a sudden my office, we get really high marks in my office. We do a good job. And so when you see an assessor, if you put two assessors beside each other, one of them says, well, I'm not going to do it right, and if they don't like it, I'll just go run for something else. Or you have the one that says, I'm going to do it right whether it's popular or not, and come hell or high water, I'm going to make sure that this is right, and then I'll let the chips fall. That's what she did. She went in there, she made sure it was right, she fixed it. So yeah, am I proud of her? Absolutely. Am I wanting her to continue to be assessor? Yes. Do I want her to go into other things and just keep on pushing these amendments? Absolutely, because when she brings them to the table, we know she's put thought into them.
William Waldrop of TWFG Insurance cares. He cares about his customers, their families, and the Livingston Parish community. Call William Waldrop today for all your insurance needs at 225-667-2040. TWFG Insurance and William Waldrop. Their policy is caring. And they're a proud sponsor of Local Leaders, the podcast. %. And it's amazing what you can accomplish when everybody works together for a common cause. And that sounds very cliche-ish, but it's true. When government functions at its best, it's when everybody's working together.
Everybody's paddling in the same direction.
That's it.
And it was very satisfying.
No gridlock.
Yeah, it was very satisfying sitting in committee when I had senators that I've never met before, and I explained this and what this would do. And they had two of them. I believe one of them was Senator Pope. It was one of yours.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they had sat on local boards before they became legislators, and they were like, I was on the town. I think one of them said he was on the town council.
Pope
and he
was on school board.
He was on the school board, and this would come up, and they would want to roll the millage forward. And when I'd ask, why are we doing this? Oh, we have to do it or we lose it. He goes, now I understand why. This makes sense. Thank you. So, they were very appreciative. And it's just a matter that everybody is in their own bubble and they're doing their jobs.
That's right.
And this is part of my job. And I was doing it because I want my parish. Just like Jeff loves Livingston, I love Lafourche. I love Louisiana. I want the best. And I know in order to stay competitive, just like I wanted to stay competitive, Lafourche to stay competitive with the surrounding parishes, we need to stay competitive with these states. And if this is just one small step in the right direction to do that, then I will put in years of work and research, and I will go to the Capitol and I will talk about it. I have been all over the state talking about this constitutional amendment. My staff, like your family, my kids, they just like, we got it, Mom. We got it. My staff wants to make a TikTok with Mambo number 5 so that everybody remembers it doesn't get lost.
That would be great.
When you believe in something and you know it's the right thing,
that's right.
Even if it fails, which I'm hoping
it won't.
But I know that I did everything. I put in 110% along with my fellow assessors. We did everything we could. And as long as I don't have any regret, I don't mind doing what's right.
I love it. And we're definitely going to do our part to push this out and let people be educated on exactly, the facts of this amendment. And it's number 5 on your ballot if you're curious about that in November.
I want to say one thing. I want to talk to the people of Livingston Parish. I know you go all around the state and you go all over the place.
Yeah, but this is my heaviest.
This is our heaviest. And when I tell you that we need to pass this amendment, Amendment number 5, as Jim said a little bit earlier, this is probably one of the most important amendments that we've had as far as assessments in years and years and years. And I'm asking you as your assessor, as your friend, as somebody that you know, to support number 5, a Constitution Amendment number 5. Let's pass this and let's start getting to a point where we can start getting our millages lowered, and we can take that excuse away and we can make it a better place for business to come into our parish. Because if we can lower our millages and everything and it's more competitive, we can bring businesses in.
Absolutely.
But we can do something here to fix a wrong that's been in for 49 years. We can make it right.
That's it.
And Livingston Parish is a huge point in this. And I'm asking you to please go out and support Amendment number 5, November the 8th.
Definitely supporting this. It just makes good common sense to me. And very happy that you introduced that and pushed it through. I know it was a lot of hard work. You brought up just the verbiage in that sort of amendment has to be perfect, and I know that just from watching parish council meetings. They'll have something that you would think would take a week to draw up, and you got to make sure it's bulletproof and right and legally right. And wow, the verbiage will just blow your mind. Like you said, one word will make all the difference in the world.
All the difference.
Yeah. So thank you very much. You've done a great job. Maybe we'll see you on the governor's ticket or something one day.
Well,
you got a future.
It's been brought up a time or two. I'll just say that the only one that's not saying yes is her.
There you go. So congratulations to you. And Jeff, I do want to bring this up. Now, I go in Carter's quite a bit. And the last several months, I've went in there several times, and I would see Assess the Need out front, and I would tease them every time I walk by, and I'm like, Jeff paying you overtime, be out here on a Saturday.
So we had people stand out in front since the last time I've talked to you. We had our back to school drive in August, and Jim, I would tell you that we were working at Walmart's for years, for 20 something years. This was our 22nd year to do it. Wow. And so for 21 years we was at Walmart in front of the stores, and it just seemed that there was always an issue with corporate. You got corporate. They always just have to have an issue. Red tape. And so this year we had our director, Bobby Jo Guerin, came to us. She said, what if we tried something a little bit different? What if we go and talk to our local stores? So we went to Carter's, Village Market, and Oak Point, and we said, what do you think? Now, you got to realize that it was a leap of faith because Walmart has such a big volume. They got Walker, Denham Springs, and Watson stores, and that's such a big volume. Yeah. And so we would raise so much money in front of the store, so we were worried about it. Okay, again, Mom gets on the prayer line because every year I don't think it's going to work. And Wendy knows my mom, when she tells you she's praying, she's praying.
Never gonna
ask him to ask his mom to pray.
When they know that my mom's praying, so every year I have to ask Mom. And so Bobby Jo said, let's go try these stores. So we had all of the Carters, the Village Market, and Oak Point. We had our best year we have ever come close to. Almost double the money that we raised in front of the stores was from these stores over Walmart. And so you couldn't blow me back to Walmart. I am fine with where we are. Our locals, we was able to support our local people, and I love doing local business anyway. And so we were raised a lot of money. And so whenever this podcast, it may be already over, but Thursday the 20th of October, I'll do that again, October the 20th, we're having our Assess the Need Chef Showcase. We're bringing in 14, 15 restaurants into Walker. Want you to be there as one of our guests because you always support us so much.
Love it.
And we're going to have all these restaurants come in. We've sold tables, and we're going to have an auction. And we're going to have enough money to pay for next year's school supply drive. So it's always good when you go into the year knowing that you've almost got it paid for, because it's not a good feeling when you know you're only about 10% of the way. But if you can be 25, 30, 40, 50% of the way to paying for next year, you can rest a lot easier in January.
That's a beautiful thing. And shout out to the Canes who
absolutely
didn't give you any red tape.
Absolutely.
They said, come on out here and set up.
But it was Village Market down in Port Vincent, Carter's, and it was Oak Point. John and Greg and Billy, they all stepped up. So the Canes, their whole family, Greg, John, it was phenomenal. And they not only did they step up, they actually jumped in and started helping us. Yeah. Every morning I'd get there, you would have the guys, they would bring out the ice chest, they'd bring out the tents, they'd bring out the thing. We just had to sit there and basically say, you want to help Assess the Need? We didn't have to worry about it so much.
That's
so
a beautiful
Krista
thing.
Watts laid us a wonderful foundation. Delia worked real hard to promote it, and Krista laid us a foundation. Bobby Jo picked up where Krista left off because Krista went back to part-time in our office, and so it just flowed seamlessly. And my employees, phenomenal. I'll put them up against anybody in the state.
Oh yeah, and look, they're out there, and they're making it happen. And one of the just a beautiful nonprofit that is. It's hard to not support kids, right? Yeah. And the needs that they may have, and it's hard to beat Assess the Need when it comes to that.
She supports us. She sends us a check and does everything.
Yeah, just a beautiful thing, and look, people working together.
I'd cook, but then that would be dismal response.
We didn't ask her to put her food up Thursday. No.
If somebody's sick, I'm like, I'd cook for you, but that would make you feel worse. I'm in tax for a reason. The numbers are nice to me.
Oh, love that. Yes, very much. Well, thank you for coming by. Jeff, anything else you want to talk about today?
No, I'm just really surprised about one thing, because the last 3 times I come on here, that was all you could talk about for a little while. The hair's gone.
Yes.
We raised $12,000 to go to St. Jude. We gave the $12,000 to St. Jude, and I'm donating my hair, and so it will go out. My son also did it. His hair was a lot prettier than mine. Mine was just this, and so It's about 50-50 right now, Jim, that some want me to have my hair back long and some of them don't. And but in my household, it's 100% that we will not be going back to the long
there ain't
hair.
no 50-50.
No 50-50. No 50-50. So no one liked the long hair.
Look, and that was a commitment. I mean,
It was a 2.5 year commitment.
Wow.
Yeah.
I loved it because he
Yeah.
would come into the meetings and he was like, "Oh,
Flowing.
my hair," and
His
I'm like,
mane.
"No sympathy here, honey. Look." But I have to say, he has political hair, and my family with political hair. You could stand in front of the news camera with hurricane winds, and it wasn't moving.
That's it. We call it televangelist hair.
Love it. And from a bald-headed guy, I'm very jealous. So, yeah, very good. And obviously, thank you for that commitment. And Children of St. Jude, if you never toured that facility,
Absolutely.
wow. It'll change your life just going through there and looking at it, and what a commitment you made to grow your hair out for that nonprofit, and for 2.5 years. That's quite a thing. And so thank you very much for that. Thank you for always coming on. And look, I'll tell y'all, as far as assessing is concerned, and Jeff Taylor, he is someone that loves to get information out there. And sometimes you don't get that out of your elected officials. So we really appreciate it that you come by and fill the public in. And I promise you, we're going to blast it out there. I am so proud of you, and we just met today for the first time, y'all. But this lady right here has really made an impression on me. Working hard, working with other people in the assessing industry, and they are just making some good common sense decisions. So number 5 on that ballot is going to be a constitutional amendment, and we want to support it. Thank you so much for coming on,
Thank you
Jeff.
for having me.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. And from everybody at Local Leaders of Podcast, we appreciate you listening, watching, and please give us a like on Facebook, all your social media sites that you catch us on. And until next time, I'm Jim Chapman, reminding you to love your community, support local business and local assessors, and keep leading. Thank you very much. Stephanie Berthelot and the crew at SR Enterprise can handle it all, from sheetrock to texture to paint. Give Stephanie a call at 504-432-9284. SR Enterprise, where they spread the paint and you spread the word. BJ Pawn and Gun in Denham Springs wants to buy your unwanted gold jewelry, gold coins, and gold bullion. With 30 years of experience operating in the Livingston Parish area, BJ Pawn wants to be your source when selling your gold. So stop by BJ Pawn today for a no-obligation offer. BJ Pawn, a proud sponsor of Local Leaders, the podcast.